And so I talked about what Islam is, and I talked about a few common misconceptions. The most popular being that Muslim is a religion and that Islamic people are the people that follow Muslims, which is totally wrong. Muslims are the people that follow Islam. They're the equivalent, like this is Christians and this is Christianity, and they follow that. And so I talked about those misconceptions, but now I'm going to talk about the anti-sentimental feelings toward Muslims in the United States. Now, I think that you've probably encountered some anti-sentimental feelings, but you've probably just not seen that they were anti-sentimental. Like, for instance, on social media, I always see jokes of people making fun of Muslims for, say, how they dress or the Quran or something, just making wisecracks about that. And people laugh or repost it and they encourage it, but they don't really see how how painful that would be to see on your timeline. And so I just think that anti-sentimental feelings, they really, say the political election of 2016, Donald Trump, for instance, he's widely known for wanting to create a wall to keep out immigrants and et cetera, and he's also voiced so many other opinions that I don't want to get into because that's a show in itself. And so, also, there are so many stereotypes that come from anti-sentimental feelings toward Islamic people, and some aren't even stereotypes. Like, for instance, I was flying to Washington, D.C. by myself. Or no, I was flying from D.C. to Nashville, and there was a man behind me, and I think that he was a Muslim. Well, he had a Quran in his hand, and we were in line trying to go through TSA, and so I went through and got my stuff, and I sat waiting for the rest of the group that I was with to get ready to board a plane, and they were just giving him the hardest time trying to go through security, and they were just doing unnecessary things that were just, like, they made him open up his Quran and they had to, like, flip through it and, like, put it through the machine. Like, that's extra. I was carrying bags and stuff, and they didn't do half as much stuff to me as they did to him. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, wow, this is the country we live in. And other people were just looking, and I saw a couple teenagers just laughing. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is actually happening. And it caught me off guard because I've always heard about stories like that, but I've never seen anything like that firsthand. And I thought about that the whole plane ride home, and I was just like, wow. And so we see things like this. And for instance, we see things like this and we don't ever take a stand. Now, there are some brave souls who do, but for the most part, people don't. And another thing that really, really irritates me, people are always talking about ISIS, which is a terrorist group that needs to be stopped ASAP. The biggest thing that irks me is people who think that all followers of Islam are part of ISIS. That is not what's going on at all. That's like saying all people who listen to hip hop are drug dealers, or all people who listen to soul are hippies. You can't judge an entire race or group or party by one thought. Like, I grew up in a Democratic household, but I can tell you that not all Democrats hate gays or whatever. And I can tell you that not all Democrats hate Republicans. It's just, I hate stereotypes like that. And I hate when people try to classify large groups by one thing that just so happens to be popular among that group of people. Like, yes, a lot of people in the world like fried chicken. Yes, a lot of black people like fried chicken. Not all black people like fried chicken, and I wish people would get that through their heads.
Well, Lana, when you see people thinking in terms of animosity toward these various groups, we've got about 2 minutes in this segment. When you see people thinking about the animosity toward various groups, to put it within the African-American context, and you think in terms of slavery, the Civil War, and then the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, are you contending, or are you saying that all of these groups, no matter what group they might, what religion they might belong to, have the same constitutional and civil rights liberties. Is that what we're saying here?
Everybody deserves a chance at life. Everybody deserves a chance to be able to walk through TSA without being double-checked just because of the traditional dress that they're wearing. Everyone deserves a chance to be able to walk freely down the street without being called ISIS. Every black woman deserves the right to walk down the street without being called I don't know if I can say that on TV.
No,
but I'm
don't
not
say
going to.
And
And every white person deserves not to be able to be labeled as, every white Southern person deserves not to be able to be called KKK or say some stupid stereotype like they date their cousins or something. Because, I mean, sure, that may have happened in the South, but you can't classify a whole group of people by that one thing. And that's my biggest issue. And I wish that there were more groups that were fighting for the rights of the minorities that people kind of sweep under the rug. Like, for instance, for black people, they have the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And they fight for our rights, but how many groups do you see? And there are plenty of black rights groups like the Black Panthers and the NAACP, et cetera, et cetera. But how many Islamic groups do you see that fight for the rights of Islam?
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Impact have. In my own
in your
world.
Like
I told you about the airport incident. It's crazy. We were all going through. I was coming back from D.C. because I was with the Junior National Young Leaders Conference.
Okay, well, let's see. We say that all groups deserve civil rights, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments.
That's the right to vote, the right to
citizenship, right? They are citizens, and they have the right to vote, and they have the 13th, 14th, and the 15th. The 13th Amendment is freed slavery, and the 14th Amendment is citizenship. Abolish
slavery, gave us the right to vote and the right to citizenship.
That's right, and so
everybody deserves that.
Work around in there and talk about that. Some of the things that make us all alike in spite of what religion or what situation we might find ourselves in.
Okay, so 13 slavery, 14 is vote.
Yeah, and the 14th citizenship.
Okay,
15th.
so slavery, citizen, vote.
Yeah, and put much information on the importance of voting too, because we're in a voting season and whatever, and et cetera.
Don't let Donald Trump.
Huh?
Yeah, okay.
You know, just that's what I'm talk about, the basic constitutional rights that people have. The 13th Amendment black folks had because they were slaves. In the 14th Amendment they became citizens, and the 15th Amendment allowed them the right to vote. And now when we talk about voting, this is where it's needed. People like your people in your situation. And thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's giving us some information in reference to anti-Islamic sentiment in the United States of America. Now, Alana, you've covered quite a bit of information during the first and second segment. Let's give you the opportunity during the final segment to deal with some of the other aspects of this anti-Islamic sentiment.
All right, and so if you're just tuning in the second segment, I talked about one personal experience that I saw anti-Semitism. Sentiment, oh my God, sentiment going on towards a man who was carrying a Quran. He had on a traditional dress from some country. I'm not quite sure because I haven't really taken any cultural classes. But he was an American. He was carrying a Quran, so I'm going to make an inference that the man was a Muslim. And so we were kind of okay, I was in Washington, D.C., so I was at John F. Kennedy Airport, and I was trying to go to Nashville. And so I was going through TSA, and he was behind me. And so I got all my stuff packed. I put it in the little cubbies. They put it through. I got my stuff back. It was over with. And I was waiting on the chaperones that I was with to accompany me onto the flight and all that. So I kind of sat down and I was observing what else was going on at the airport. And I saw TSA kind of giving the man who was behind me a hard time. Like, for instance, they made, what they would do, like, this is his Quran. They would open it and just, like, kind of manhandle it, trying to see if there was anything in there, and they were shaking it. Like, it was, and it didn't look in too great a condition, so it looked like it could have snapped like that. And it was just, they were giving him, they were doing so much extra, and that really just made my blood boil, because at that time there wasn't anything I can do, because I couldn't go up there, because once you go through TSA, I couldn't go straight, because as he was coming through it, I couldn't go through that line, and everything was too busy, so I couldn't really do anything about it except, you know, tell the chaperones I was with, and even they expressed their own disgust about it. And that just really made me think, wow, like, that's something that happens so often, but it's never reported on websites, etc. But let that have been any other race getting racially profiled, I promise you it would have been everywhere. If that was me and they were double checking my stuff and asking me stupid stuff like, do I live in Chicago, or do I have a father, and stupid stereotypical things like that, trust me, it would have been on News Channel 5 like that, or on Fox 17.
So you find that this is quite prevalent. It's quite prevalent in terms of the denial in a real sense of people's constitutional rights.
It is.
Citizenship rights and whatnot. Is that what you're saying here?
It is, and that's why I feel like there are certain political candidates who do not encourage equality. I'm not going to go into name dropping or anything, but there are certain candidates that do not support equality, and I feel like, okay, right now the two top candidates are Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and that's just, you just really can't fight that. And I feel like, since I'm not old enough to vote, I'm just watching this unfold, and I'm not making any certain choice because my opinion wouldn't really be taken for anything because I can't vote. But I'm watching this unfold, and I'm listening to both of their speeches and all the things that they promised to do with America. And I'm just sitting here thinking, like, wow, one of these candidates really wants an America that's built around him and people who are like him, that 1%. And I don't feel like you could really be a president if you don't think about other people, because running a country, you have to put others before yourself. You have millions of people who are looking up to you, who are abiding by your rules, and if you exclude them from some of the things, A, that's not right, and B, that's dangerous.
Alana, in your category and your age group, I know you're not old enough to vote yet, but do you find that there's any kind of sentiment in reference to what is going on from a social level, from a religious level, among the people that you meet every day? I mean, is there any recognition?
I see so many sentiment, not even just Islamic. I see so much sentiment towards me going to school from my peers, because I was blessed with a brain and I've put my brain to use. So I'm in a lot of extracurricular activities that are academic based. So I've been called things like, I've been told things like, I don't want to be black because all I do is hang around white kids, and I'm so white and things like that. But the last time I checked, I don't look that white.
So you think that in a real sense that there's quite a bit of really racism in a real sense among people of your age, and what are you doing to try to change that in order to make the world that we live in a better world? What are you doing, and what do you find that some of your peers can do?
You know, first of all, what I personally do is I don't feed into it. I'm not going to fight some ignorant child who comes up to me spurring and spitting out a bunch of racial slurs towards me, because that's not going to do anything but end in a fight, and that's just not what I'm about to do. First of all, I'll calmly ask them, why do you feel the way that you feel about that? And if they have sense enough to give me an answer, I'm not going to bash them for that answer, because they probably, because see, racism, you're not born racist, you're taught racism. If they're saying all that to me, they probably grew up or in a household or a neighborhood where things like that were just Common Core. And so I asked them, say, let's make a mock conversation. You're so white, all you do is hang around white kids. Well, why do you think that I'm so white? Because all you do is hang around white kids. Well, it's not necessarily my fault. Say if I'm in a homeroom that's basically, in a lot of schools, they choose your classes by test scores. And so there will be, say, 6 teachers that have 2 advanced, 2 proficient, 2 basic, or a basic and a below basic. And so it is not my fault that in, say, a certain school, there are a lot of advanced students who just so happen not to be African American. That's not my doing, and I didn't ask for that to happen. And if I hang around all white kids, I just hang around my homeroom because those are the people that I know. And if if the majority of them happen to be white or German or Irish or just non-African American, then that explains why I have so many friends who are not African American, because that's not who I'm in class with. I have plenty of African American friends. I'm in plenty things where I'm with plenty of African American people. Like, for instance, when I went to the Junior National Young Leaders Conference, it was a melting pot full of people. Like, there were so many different races. We even had a girl from Germany come. Like, it was just an awesome thing, and I got to learn about so many different cultures, and it was just so eye-opening.
And so, Alana, today what you're saying here is that while there might be anti-sentiment, whether or not only against Islamic and et cetera, that you believe that everybody ought to try to practice not only love, but recognize that each person has the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment rights, and that they ought to be free, and everybody ought to be equal. Is that what we're trying? Is that what you're trying?
Speaking of those, the 13th Amendment banned slavery. The 14th gave us citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, people need to go out and vote. It's voting season right now. That is the biggest thing I want to emphasize. If you are strong-willed and you want America to see the light of day, go out and vote. Because, please, I hate when people say, I'm not going to vote, but it'll be the main one sitting around mad when the candidate they didn't want to win ends up winning. You could have prevented that just by voting. So I encourage everybody to go out and vote. I would if I could. And so I'm just really trying to get my peers to go out and vote, because I have a lot of friends who can vote and things like that. So I'm encouraging everybody to get out there.
And so, Lana, let me thank you during the last half minute that we have here dealing with this very, very important subject. I think that from what we've talked about, our audience has a pretty good idea in terms of how many people see some of the problems and some of the issues that we raise. And of course, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments.
Thank you and good morning.